Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School podcast. I don't know why I can't keep a straight face because I just have to look at this guy. We have a returning guest on, although he's like really at this point, it is stretching the boundaries of the term guest to, I mean, like, I don't
squatter. I'm a squatter. I'm living in your basement. You invited me as a guest, and I just never kind of moved out. You watch Curb, I'm basically Leon. Like I'm just not leaving.
My mind is going back to 1L contracts and squatters' rights, and I've forgotten all of it. I know if you exist in my basement for 7 years, I think there's an argument that you could adversely possess it, but that's something tells me that's not what people want to hear about on the podcast.
I took out a renter's insurance policy on Knicks Film School, so things are going well. Just in case, you got to prepare for the worst.
What would that even entail? Fred Katz of The Athletic, and also, as I'm now being made fun of for mentioning so often, host of the wildly growing podcast sensation Katz and Shoot, which this week featured a wonderful episode with CP the franchise of Knicks Fan TV. Constant great guests on there, and I now have the additional added challenge of not stepping on the things that he's already talked about. So it just makes my job just wonderful. How are you, Fred?
I'm great. We can step on stuff. We always think of new twists and turns to come up with things. Like I feel like when I talk to you about the Knicks, there are things that just kind of like unveil in our conversations. Part of the reason why I love doing this podcast is because whenever I come on, I feel like it even helps me with my writing. Like I'll come on, we'll have a conversation about something and I'll be like, oh, like, I hadn't really thought about it in the way that I put it with John, but he kind of got that out of me. Like you'd be a really good editor in that sense. And so like, I'm like, oh, this is like free help for my stories.
I was so unprepared to receive that I'll call it a compliment from you, but that's great. That makes me very happy because
that's totally a compliment. That's a great, that's like the best interviewing trait someone can have.
Well, before we try to spur some new little germs of journalism, see that was good, germs of journalism in your little noggin there. Let's talk about some stuff that you have written recently, or I should say have written, but as of the time we're recording this, hasn't come out yet. But by the time this pod is dropping, will have come out. And you told me it was okay that I could share a little bit of what we know. So you have kind of been dropping hints, little breadcrumbs, that you have a story coming out about the most unlikely topic or subject matter, and that you would kind of reveal it here on the pod. So this story is dropping Thursday. That's what I know. So I'm just going to ask you, like, what can you finally tell me instead of keeping all of us in the dark?
Yes, I can drop some larger breadcrumbs. I won't reveal the entire story. But I have been excited to write this story for such a long time. It's about Ryan Arcidiacono.
And the Knicks 15th man? Or whatever he is, 13th man? Whatever he is.
The Knicks 17th man. He might 18th man. He might be behind the two ways. But you know what? Like, that dude is so fascinating. There is a reason that he's still in the league. And the reason that he's still in the league, even though he literally hasn't scored this year, is because of all the weird quirks that he does behind the scenes. And my personal favorite, I thought, is the Knicks officially guaranteed his contract this week. And he's kind of the punching bag of the locker room, but he also punches. Oh my goodness. It's crazy. They all just crap on Ryan Arcidiacono and he feeds it right back. It's an unbelievable dynamic. Even the guys who are like the sweetest, most understated personalities in that locker room are still giving crap to Ryan Arcidiacono. And he hasn't scored yet this year. If you look at the score sheet, my favorite little Ryan Arcidiacono quirk is that one thing that he does is he sits on the bench and just fixates on the other team's big men in the paint. And if somebody lingers in there for 3 seconds, he will scream it out to the refs. And he's become this like unbelievable force for the Knicks in getting 3-second calls on the other team. I went through and I watched every single 3-second call.
How many have there been?
There have been 16 3-second calls against Knicks opponents this year.
Okay.
13 of them have come with the defense in front of the Knicks bench.
Oh, that's not a coincidence.
And Arcidiacono is taking credit for him. He says that's how he gets his points. He doesn't count the point until the guy makes the free throw. But I talked to Isaiah Hartenstein. I talked to obviously the Villanova guys. They're all like, he is the loudest 3-second call guy in the league. There was a play earlier this year in Phoenix where Arcidiacono insists that like Nurkic was lingering in the lane. He was there for way too long, and Arcidiacono was yelling 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, screaming it out. And Nurkic, it wasn't called on Nurkic. And the next possession, or maybe 2 possessions later, Keita Bates Diop ended up getting called for one.
Okay.
And Ryan was like, it was a quick 3 seconds. And Ryan is convinced it was the makeup for the Nurkic non-call. And then 3 minutes later, there was a 3-second call on Nurkic. And it's a really fascinating, funny dynamic. The quotes from Josh Hart are utterly and completely ridiculous, including him saying that, you know, obviously he and Ryan go all the way back to college and are like unbelievably close friends. And Josh Hart is incapable of saying anything nice about any of his friends. So the quotes are him saying we should have kept Taj, and him making fun of Ryan for his voice being too squeaky when he yells. He does this ridiculous impression of Ryan where he basically takes on the voice of someone who like Steve Urkel would have bullied, you know, and does it for Ryan. It's I'm excited for the story. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's a great little behind the scenes look at like what a 15th man's job is and what a 15th man's life is, you know?
I mean, I kind of always just assume that a 15th man on a Tibbs roster is someone who's like diving on the floor in practice and whatnot. But I guess this adds another little wrinkle to it.
It is that. But here's the thing. There are a lot of guys who are going to dive onto the floor just to be able to make the team. Like there are a lot of guys who are going to play crazy hard. Like there are the Knicks don't really scrimmage anymore because it's too late in the season. Teams don't scrimmage now. But like in training camp, yeah, not really, no.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Oh, there's a point in time in the season where you just kind of stop? Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for every team. That's not a Knicks thing. It's just like,
I didn't know
it's too exhausting. You got to preserve your bodies. Practices become much lighter in the second part of the season. But like training camp, you're scrimmaging and going hard. There are 2 Knicks who take charges during training camp games. Who do you think they are?
Well, considering we're talking about Arcidiacono, I'm going to guess him. I mean, Brunson that's too obvious though, right?
It's correct.
It's Jesus Christ.
Takes those are the 2 in practice. Yep, takes charges in practice. Yep, he's a freak. He's a maniac. He's a maniac. He really shouldn't do that. But Arcidiacono does it. It makes sense. So it's like, that's the stuff you expect, that he's the guy who's going to show up really early. He's the guy who's going to leave really late. He's going to work really hard. He's going to be really well liked by his teammates. If you don't do those things as a 15th man, you're just not going to stick because somebody else is going to do those things and they're going to outdo you. But I love the 3-second thing because he takes so much pride in the 3 seconds. He's got a little tally that the video coordinators made for him.
Is this something he preps for?
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
I'm excited to read this story. I
was also told, I don't know if this is going to be in the story because it's not totally done. It'll be up Thursday morning. But I was told during the process of reporting on this story that like Thanasis Antetokounmpo, because he kind of plays like a similar sort of role, will just start yelling. If he doesn't start getting 3-second calls from the bench, he'll start yelling at the referees in Greek just to shake it up, which I really enjoyed, thinking that maybe it would just like annoy them into calling 3 seconds. So yeah, Ryan Arcidiacono making a difference. I went through all the play-by-play data for every single game, found every single 3-second call, watched every single one. And to quote him, when I told him I did that, he said, that's someone who has no life. I was like, that is correct.
It's funny because I was looking at something today about like just something like pondering fake trades and whatnot, and then because the aggregation rules with Flynn and Achua, like Archie's the next salary on down the line, unless you want to throw Grimes in a deal, and I'm looking at him like they're not going to trade him. I know they traded him; they had to trade him in the the Hart trade, right? Which must have been weird because they were teammates, but yeah, I don't want him to go anywhere. So, but this is a perfect lead-in because the thing that I wanted to open with is we'll talk about the on-court stuff in a bit, but just like, SNY Knicks does a really good job of this, posting videos from inside the locker room. I think have you ever posted inside the locker room videos? Is that not your thing?
I never do videos.
Okay.
Only because videos are way more difficult to transcribe than
that makes sense.
On my recorder app where I can slow it down to a certain speed.
But whatever.
Very inside baseball there.
No, but actually, if I could step on my tiniest pedestal in the world for a second, for the half a season that I covered every fifth Knick game for Knicks SI, I had the same thought because I tried to video stuff and put it out on social because that was part of what they wanted us to do. And I'm like, I can't get any of this, especially with Julius, who talks at the lowest volume imaginable. Yeah. Videos. If
Julius is like the low talker from Seinfeld.
Yes.
He talks very, very quiet.
To an absurd degree. You would not believe it unless you were right next to him.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, I'm getting off track here. The videos seem to show a locker room of people that are it's like they're going to Disneyland every day in terms of how much fun they're having. Now, obviously, I'm thinking since the trade, it's a 5-game win streak, the whole thing, you're going to be more happy when you're winning. But you're there every day. Can you shed a little bit of light on what it's like to with the mood of this team and maybe how, if at all, it has changed since the trade, which I don't think we've even talked about yet. So that we'll get into that next.
I don't think I've ever, Tibbs after the game last night, the win over Portland, said the spirit of the team is high. Is that what he said? The spirit of the team is high.
Let's go with that.
I don't think I've ever heard Tibbs comment on the spirit of the team or the vibes. That's I don't think I've ever.
He'll never say the word vibes.
No, he'll never say vibes.
Does he know what vibes are?
They could win a title. They could win the title. They could go 16-0 in the playoffs and win the title in the most dominant title run in the history of the league. And we would talk to him after the game and he would say, well, it doesn't matter once it's done. Got to prep for film for opening day. Got to start looking on how to get better. That's what he would say. Him saying the spirits are high is whoa. Okay. I honestly think it's exactly how it seems to be from the outside. Even in reporting on this Ryan story, it's guys are jumping in and saying ridiculous things, some things that I, in order to save them, am not printing because they were so outrageous and ridiculous for them trying to be so funny. I think the vibes are very, very good. It is a fantastic, if you are someone who believes that team chemistry breeds winning, it's a fantastic argument for it. If you're somebody who believes that winning breeds team chemistry, it's a fantastic argument for it. So we can keep having that debate forever.
Does it matter?
All I know, it doesn't matter. All I know is that there's no question, Julius is playing with a different kind of energy. Guys in that locker room are feeling really, really good about themselves and that team. It's really loose. They're just playing loose. They're acting loose. You know who's playing loose? You know who's playing so loose? Shockingly? Deuce McBride.
Well, you had the tweet. I referenced your tweet actually on the post game last night? Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. That something happened in Philly. I don't know what happened, but something happened in Philly.
It was like he saw it and he was like, "Oh, I can do this."
Yeah.
I think sometimes we think of
from 3 this year.
Yeah, I think sometimes we look at basketball players as robots, and we think okay, what you shoot is what you shoot. And we're kind of seeing that with a lot of players, there is this sort of human element to this. And I think this applies to Quentin Grimes too, where it's Deuce was coming in when he was coming in and he'd be filling for a game maybe, but he knew that he was not the guy. He knew he didn't have just like Like he knew he had a leash, and he still has a really short leash, but he knows he has a short leash in that moment and not a short leash overall.
Yep.
Like even when he was part of the rotation for parts of last year before they acquired Josh Hart from like December until February, he was in the rotation for 2 months, but he knew if he played like crap, he was out. I think he is reassured, especially after the extension. Like, we believe in you. I'll tell you what. Somebody from Portland came up to me yesterday after that game and was like, I cannot believe Deuce McBride signed that extension.
Really?
Yeah, it shocked me. But he was like, I can't believe Deuce McBride signed that extension.
That's really
it was
fascinating.
Like the way that he has played the last 3 games. He was like, I don't care if he plays the exact same way, but he shoots 33%. That is like a really good backup point guard who could have gotten paid. He was like, I can't believe he signed it. I don't know if I agree with that take. I actually thought it was a little bit, and I've said this on my pod, I thought it was a little bit ambitious on the Knicks side. But he's playing great ball for like a week straight. He's playing great. And I don't know if he's going to keep hitting shots like this, because you still watch him in practice and the spin on his jumper is off. It reminds me of when I was a manager at Syracuse and Eric Devendorf's jump shot would spin like sideways. It was like a knuckleball. It kind of reminds me of that. And except Devendorf, I mean, he was a real marksman in spite of that ridiculously ugly spin. But I'm following the Deuce thing. He's been good, and he's definitely a good defender. We know that.
Well, so we'll divert course for a second. So because in regards to his like playing free and loose and whatever you want to say, I'm trying to remember from last night in the Portland game, he was in the corner and he was putting some moves on some Portland defender trying to take him off the dribble. I don't know if you remember the play I'm talking about. And he was like, I do. Yeah. Have we ever seen him try to do that before? If we have, I have it. I don't remember it.
No.
That was fun.
No, we've never seen the attempt. I mean, even just like there was a play that Benji highlighted on Twitter today where it's just an out of bounds play in the corner.
That was, yeah.
It's a baseline out of bounds play. Deuce inbounds it to Isaiah Hartenstein. He then curls around Hartenstein, who pitches it back to them, and then Hartenstein screens Deuce's man, and Deuce puts up a corner 3. The decisiveness with which he's taking those threes, there are multiple contested threes he was just taking really decisively. He's playing with no hesitance offensively. And I think he just feels a lot more confident. Like he's a kid who he works really, really hard. That's why Tibbs loves him, because he works his ass off and he cares about the right things. And that's why he's so, endeared by the coaching staff. And now we're kind of seeing like, okay, this is what Tibbs envisioned. I know. I'm 100% certain that Tibbs tells people behind the scenes that like, he's better than you think offensively. He's been saying that for a while. He's better than you think. And I was like, well, I still think the same, but I don't know. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe he is going to end up being a solid offensive player. And if you get that kind of on-ball defense and that kind of tenacity with good shooting and fine enough off the dribble stuff, now all of a sudden you have a really solid backup point guard.
But it's funny you use that phrase, because I know you've heard Benji say the thing about like he's not really a point guard, he's more of a wing, which is fine because he could defend up a position. I don't know what his height is. I don't really care what his height is. He could defend twos. He could probably defend some threes, like for real, not like
especially backups.
Yeah, exactly. Because what are we talking about here for long-term planning purposes? We're talking about 3 minutes a half, 4 minutes a half when it comes down to like nut cutting time. But there's still the initiating offense question, which, well, let's save that for later, because that's a whole different conversation. Let's think back to the locker room for a sec. So Deuce is playing a lot more confidence. Grimes playing a lot more confidence. That's all great. I don't want to turn this into a Raptors podcast, but it's hard to not notice what's going on in Toronto in terms of how those guys are playing. Is there any other way to read this trade other than just like, well, actually, no, let me put it this way. Was this a change of scenery that needed to happen for all parties involved? The Knicks, the Raptors, quickly, RJ, their teammates, OG, like everything, or is it just simpler in terms of fit?
I mean, we talked about it when the trade happened. I thought it was a good trade for both teams. I really think we're going to look at the trade that I compared it to was when I was covering the Thunder and they made the first Paul George trade. Paul George for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. And there are a lot of similarities there beyond just like good player on expiring contract traded for two other players. You know, in that deal, you get Victor Oladipo, a former number 2 pick who had not really found a way to reach his potential yet over his first 5 seasons. You know, RJ, a number 3 pick who had not found a way to reach his potential over his first 4 seasons. Oladipo's going back to Indiana where he played college ball and Indiana valued him more because of that. RJ going back to Canada and Toronto values him more because of that. Sabonis, his rookie year with the Thunder, was young, had potential, lottery pick, but was playing out of position next to Steven Adams, playing the 4, and they basically used him as a stretch 4. Just a ton of catch and shoot threes. And as we can see now, that's just not the way to use Domantas Sabonis. But when you have Steven Adams, it's really difficult to play him another way. Quickly, similar sort of deal. Extremely talented, really good young player who is just stuck behind Jalen Brunson and is due for a breakout. And those guys go to Indiana, and Victor Oladipo makes All-NBA, and Sabonis becomes an excellent player. And then he becomes Tyrese Halliburton in another trade. The Thunder get Paul George. George resigns. They trade Paul George for SGA, who might be the freaking MVP, and 948 first-round picks. I guarantee you, 100 times out of 100, both of those teams would do that trade again. Yeah. They were both thrilled with that trade. And I think the most likely scenario is that the Raptors and the Knicks look back on this similarly, that the Knicks re-sign Anunoby and they just continue to have a starting 5. It makes a whole ton of sense and is legitimately really good. And the Raptors re-sign IQ, who's playing well for them. And maybe RJ gets a little better. He's 23, man. Like he can get better.
Playing very well.
You know, he's playing 10 for 13 last night. And RJ becomes a better player just as he ages and gets older. And I think that's the most likely scenario. I think everyone's going to be happy. Pretty good.
Speaking of happiness, one reason that I think IQ maybe wasn't happy was he didn't get paid this summer. He still brought it 1,000%. You know, he played wonderfully this year. Do you like how there's that part of it, and then there's the RJ part of it because he just kind of struggled after the hot start. Like, do you think that there was a world like where? Well, let me just ask you this: like, do you think quickly not getting paid this summer? Like, how much do you think that factored into all of this?
All of what?
The fact that he got traded for OG Anunoby.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the fact that he didn't extend played a ton into it. I mean, quickly wanted to get paid and you wanted to start. I mean, that's documented. And I don't think he was behind the scenes causing problems. I don't think he was behind the scenes, you know, being a jerk. I don't think that was the case, but he made it clear he wanted to start and he felt like he was deserving of being a starter. And I think basically anybody who's seen him play would agree that he's a starting caliber point guard. He just happens to be behind a dude who's an all-star. And now he's getting an opportunity and he's playing 30 minutes a night with the Raptors. He's averaging 18. He's got a 54% effective field goal percentage. Like he's been good. And he had a couple clunkers in there too. Like, yeah. I think the numbers are going to get better than that. I imagine he'll be averaging 20 something and on good efficiency. Oh, yeah. And he's going to be really good for them. Like there was real frustration in the locker room with those guys too. And this ties back to like, we're talking about the vibes. I struggle to separate the fact that there was real frustration in the locker room before this trade and that this trade solved that frustration. And that was part of the logic of making it. And now the vibes are incredible. Or as Tibbs might say, the spirit is high. Now, when I say there was frustration, I think people tend to think in worst case scenarios. They tend to think in like all of this drama in locker rooms. Oh, they hate each other, all this. That wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. Julius Randle does not hate RJ Barrett at all. Like, they like each other. They're both nice people. Like that was not the case. They got along well as people. But I think there was frustration from a basketball perspective where, like, RJ is frustrated because he had been told for years he was going to be the face of the franchise and his minutes were going down. Manuel quickly is frustrated because he feels like he's losing money and he's losing opportunities because he's playing 24 minutes a game when he feels like he's a starter. Dante DiVincenzo is frustrated because he comes over from Golden State and is playing 6 or 7 fewer minutes a game. Quentin Grimes is frustrated because, as you know, he said it publicly, because of the touches, because of the shots. Josh Hart has said it publicly multiple times. He's frustrated because of kind of his role and the shots, and he didn't love playing backup 4 and all that kind of stuff. And this trade solved everything. DiVincenzo plays more. Grimes gets his opportunity to bust out. He quickly gets his opportunity to be a starter. RJ gets his opportunity for kind of a new situation. Hart is no longer playing the backup 4. You know, you look at all of it and it's like it solved everything. And I don't think there was fighting behind the scenes. I've heard absolutely nothing to support that there was like fighting and bickering and anger and people not liking each other. But it was just like people who felt like they were good and deserved opportunities, and they were frustrated they weren't getting the opportunities they wanted to get. And that happens in any work environment, and it certainly happens in hyper competitive work environments. I think it was an inevitability that this was going to happen when they signed Dante DiVincenzo. There was just too much redundancy of skill set. The roster was not. Yeah, the roster was not balanced enough. The day they signed, or the day after they signed DiVincenzo, I wrote a story like something is off. Yeah, something is off with the Knicks, and it was because I knew DiVincenzo was kind of insurance for when they trade one of those guys for somebody else. At the time, we didn't know it was going to be Anunoby. We expected it could be Anunoby because they've been after him forever, but it was going to be someone, probably a big wing, because that's what the roster needed. And eventually they make that deal. Eventually they work something out for Anunoby. I think it's going to work out great for everybody. I think everybody should be happy.
Yeah, I mean, we can move on, but like it's hard for me to hear both Julius and Hartenstein, and maybe there was somebody else who I missed, but definitely those two say the same verbiage in different like post-game interviews about no one's forcing shots. You know, like the ball's moving. And I mean, my God, do you know what the assist percentage is for this new starting 5? It's like it's like 72. Wow. Now, granted, it's I looked it up today. I couldn't believe it, which would be the best assist percentage in the league. But yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a wild number. Like you look at like the 2014 Spurs. Yeah. You know, the beautiful game. That's the team that we refer to as the beautiful game, right? Like, I think that team was like in the mid 60s on assist percentage.
I think the league leader right now is like 68 or 69. So
yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, look, it'll come down obviously, but and as a team that since the trade, they're only like 15th or 16th, but it's a big step up from where they were, which was last.
Well, yeah, because the bench, all they do is they just grab defensive rebounds and just sprint the other way and get layups. So no assists needed.
So okay, that's a good transition. So I mean, I don't know how much we want to like talk fake trades. I really did kind of want to focus, much like you and CP did, on like the basketball that we're seeing because it's so good. But I like at the same time, like I don't know what there is to say because to me it's so obvious that like everything is just fitting in. I guess let me ask you this: what do you think?
Can I ask you a hard question?
I don't know that I can answer it, but sure.
If you power rank Eastern Conference teams today, like the playoffs start today and you have to power rank Eastern Conference teams. And it's like college sports where the seeding is not by record. It's just by power rankings. Who's the best right now? Where are the Knicks?
Well, Boston's one. That's easy. Power rank them for the playoffs?
Yeah. Power. Where are the Knicks?
So
are the Knicks the second best team in the East right now? Am I going to make you say that in your podcast?
Yeah. So Andrew just typed in twice in the chat. Be bold, John. One with periods in between each word. So be bold, John. Really for emphasis there. It's been a lot of decades of NBA basketball I've been watching, and not always does the best player in a playoff series win. A vast majority of the time, when you have the best player in a playoff series, you win, all things being equal. Like, obviously, there are times where it's a major disparity, and there's clearly one team that is just much talented than the other team, and then the more talented team will overcome the fact that they may not have the best player in the series. But that's a big gap. Here, it seems like I'm setting up to put the Knicks fourth. Here's the thing, right? I've been watching Milwaukee, not just the last 3 games where they've lost all 3, and Dame wasn't in there in the last game, and boy, did they get their freaking doors blown off without Dame. I've loved what I've seen from Milwaukee all year. Even in wins that they've had against us, I'm like, man, we could have beaten that team. Like, I know there was the one, I think there was one blowout or against the Knicks? The one where they went like 23 for 38 from 3. Yeah, where they shot 60-something% from 3. Okay. I have not loved what I've seen from Milwaukee this year. I don't know how you could watch Milwaukee and love what you've seen. I don't know how if you're a Milwaukee fan, you could love the reporting about the fact that the coach staved off one mutiny, and like maybe there's been more that we don't really know about. I don't know. So there's that. And then there's Philly, who we just blew their doors off. And Embiid's track record in the playoffs is what it is. And like, there's the whole Philly stink of it all, because like they can't seem to get out of their own way. Can I put the Knicks 2?
You could.
That's insane. Is it not?
I asked the question.
Oh, God.
That's why I asked the question, John.
Let me say this.
Really good.
There's a gap between Boston and then the next 3. And the gap between 2, 3, and 4, in whatever order you want to put them, for me at least, is at this point probably splitting hairs. And I think the playoffs are when we're going to maybe look back at the no Harden and what they got for Harden or what they didn't get for Harden as maybe more of a thing, even though I know Harden doesn't perform in the playoffs, but like just having that extra something there. And I think it showed in the game that the 2 teams just played against each other. And then again, from Milwaukee, the whole is not is not adding up to the sum of the parts. All right, sure. You want me to give you the hot take? I'll put them 2. How about that? You having fun?
You did it!
There we go.
Fred, you did it! The Knicks are the second best team in the East, baby. In Boston, we coming for you.
Everybody happy now? Great.
That wasn't that hard. Giannis hasn't accomplished anything outside of this open gym era because Kevin Durant's foot size was 1 inch too big. Okay, and Embiid, we saw what happened on Friday. Ass whooping coming, rest of the East.
I think you couldn't put them lower than. I think you could justify them anywhere between 2 and 5.
And can I guess what the other team is that you could justify putting above them?
Yeah, Miami. It's pretty obvious. Yeah, totally. If you just want to say Miami is Miami, that's all you need to say. You want to put Miami number 1?
Fred.
You want to put Miami number 1? I'm like, that's fine.
Seriously, no, but like what? 2 of the last 3 years or whatever it is, 3 of the last. They're Miami. They do what they do.
Their coach just got $120 million extension, and everyone's reaction was okay. Oh, great deal for Miami. I can't believe it cost so little.
He should have got more. He should have got.
Everyone was like, oh, great deal for Miami. Like, there's literally no price for Eric Spoelstra that people would have been like, that's too much. I just can't even imagine it. That dude is the most unfreaking believable coach. It's insanity, and that team is good. The team is really good, and they're the Heat. They're the Heat. I don't really care what they do in the regular season anymore. So
they don't care either, Fred.
Yeah, no, they don't. So that's the one. I think you could justify them anywhere from 1 to 5. I think I'd throw them 3 right now.
That's fun.
And I agree with your take on Milwaukee. I'm worried about Adrian Griffin in a playoff series. I remember what like Tibbs did to the Cavs last year. I could see something like that in a Milwaukee series. I also think Milwaukee has nobody to guard Jalen Brunson. It's a really tough matchup for them. And they kind of have to put Giannis on Julius Randle, which can kind of mess them up because Giannis's best trait as a defender is when he can hang and be off the ball. Yeah. And if they just don't have a big wing. They don't have a defensive-minded guy who can stop those 2 guys really and keep their defense intact in the way they want to. I think I would put them ahead of Milwaukee. I think I might even put Milwaukee 5 because Milwaukee keeps losing to Miami in the playoffs. But I would still put Philly. Even after the Friday game, I would still put Philly ahead of them.
That's fair
because of the sheer talent and because Nick Nurse is a really good playoff coach.
Sure,
a really good playoff coach and a really good coach. Period. And I have a lot of trust in that Philly team. Honestly, I think they're really good, and I think it's very possible that Philadelphia could have the two best players in that series. Like there's a world where if they play the Knicks, that like Maxey. I'm not saying Maxey is always better than Brunson, but Maxey can outplay Brunson in the series just as easily as Brunson can outplay Maxey. So, we'll see how it unfolds. But look, it's pretty freaking good. Like that's a really good team. I think 50 wins is not out of the question anymore.
It's also just real quick on the Philly thing. I was thinking about this the other day because it was Benji and DJ on the pod the other night. So I think you listened to it too, saying like they didn't love OG on Maxey. And like, it's a weird thing where you have this ostensibly the most versatile chess piece defensively in the entire league, who one of the things you say about OG Anunoby is how many guys could guard Maxey one possession. And he literally did it. He started on Maxey one possession, ended up on Embiid. Like it literally happened. He can do it. But I wonder if what he does specifically gets neutralized more against Philly than against any team, because do you ever want him on Embiid? Really? Probably not. Do you ever really want him on Maxey? Probably not. So then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, then you're counting on him wrecking havoc off the ball, which Tibbs can get creative. We'll worry about that if and when it comes. But sneakily, for the ways that you've often talked about Milwaukee being a sneakily good matchup for the Knicks, maybe Philly, for as much as they just kick the shit out of them, is not the best matchup for the Knicks.
Yeah. But the Knicks, this Knicks roster might not look the same in April and May. And the Knicks roster might not look the same in April and May.
Let's get there. So, I've been putting it off. So what do you think concerns the Knicks front office the most right now against a good team in a second round playoff series? I know I'm getting ahead of myself. They haven't even, crazy things could happen. But let's just say, for argument's sake, because that's what they want to do. You said this on the pod last time. That's their goal. So let's give them their goal. They make it to the second round. What do you think concerns them most? Their starting offense versus the sort of defense they'll see, which I understand there's lots of different qualities of defense they could see, but let's just go with it. Their starting defense against whatever offense they'll see, or their bench offense, and I mean specifically when Jalen Brunson sits. What do you think is their biggest, like, we need to solve this?
I don't think they have any concerns about the starting lineup.
Defense or offense?
No, okay. I don't think so.
Great. All right.
I think they feel great about the starters. How could they not?
Those last 5 minutes of a close game that you think you would guess that they would feel okay.
Yeah, I think Tibbs might play around. Maybe one night Hart will close over somebody. Maybe one night Grimes will close over somebody. But I feel like they feel very good about the way that starting lineup fits.
Okay.
Now, Julius Randle called OG the perfect fit, and I think he's 100% right. He kind of gives them everything, and they're still figuring out ways to make it work. Like, OG does not know the plays yet. That's not a knock on him. It's not a knock on him. How could he know the plays? He wasn't on the team.
Yeah.
That's true for literally every single player who's ever been traded midseason. Precious Achiuwa doesn't know the plays yet, and Malachi Flynn doesn't know the plays yet either. There was a play in the Chicago game last week where they ran this little pistol action for OG, and it really stood out to me because they ran this little pistol action for OG, and it's an action that they ran for RJ all the time, where OG was in the corner and Brunson, the right corner, Brunson comes over on the right side, and he's supposed to go into a dribble handoff to OG, and it's ideally supposed to get him going downhill. And he takes the dribble handoff, he takes one dribble, and he just kind of like backs out as if he didn't really know where he was going, and he just lobs it to Julius Randle on the other side to do something. And that's because he didn't know the play. He wasn't in rhythm. And like 2 plays later or 3 plays later or something, he ends up slicing into a cut, which opened up a basket. And the fact that he didn't yet know one of their basic plays, which again, like completely fine. There's nothing Of course, he doesn't know their plays. That is what happens in literally every trade ever. He has to learn them. The fact that he still didn't know their plays and yet still had the wherewithal to be like, here are my cuts. Here are my lanes. Here's where I improv. Like, that he's already doing this when he doesn't even know the basics of the offense means I'm just here sitting here thinking like, this is not as good as it can be. This is going to get better. Once OG knows everything, it's going to get better. And the improv will get better too, because he'll know his guys' tendencies and he'll know where guys are going to go if plays break down in certain ways or what they're supposed to do.
We saw last night in the first quarter.
Yes.
There was those 2 or 3 or 4 plays where, and I mean, the funnest one was Brunson hitting him under the basket, which was just like, that was nirvana. But we said we're already seeing it.
Yes, totally. He's a really smart player. He's really smart. And you just quoted the 72% assist rate with that lineup right now, which is 72% of your baskets coming on assists. That's a really large number. They're getting a ton of threes. Their shot selection is great. I mean, they're just getting good looks every damn time. They're getting Hartenstein more involved. I love when they get Hartenstein involved with the bench unit. I would say I think the thing that they're watching the most is the offense with Brunson off the court. That has looked better the last few games, in part because they're playing Hartenstein just forever now. And he helps a lot with that kind of stuff. And I think Hart is taking on a little bit of a bigger burden, and they're really, really pushing that bench. So like Josh Hart, you have to push pace. You have to. Every freaking defensive rebound, you have to push pace, because this unit is meant to score in frenzies, not in some sort of methodical half-court offense. I would say I think the facilitating when Brunson is off the floor is probably the biggest concern, and I could see them doing something about that. I could definitely see them making another move, and everyone talks about the move. Will they go out and get a bigger star than Stephen A. Smith? Everybody wonders. But
why would you say his name on this podcast? Just bringing the mood down all the way.
He's a big star, man.
He just pay a lot of money. Yeah, he does.
He is a big star.
Good for him.
He makes the mid-level exception. He's doing great. Makes Spoelstra money. He's doing Spoelstra money. He's doing great. It's a lot better than neither of us. Who are we to criticize? And you know what? He's kind of a bigger star than basically most players in the NBA. So he's not really wrong.
God bless him.
I think you can say it about any team. Yeah. But everyone talks about the star trade. I think there's like a move on the fringe of the roster for them to make. What I would look out for is that if they do make another move, I think it will be somebody who they could see. And I know Jeremy Cohen has made this point. I think it's a really good one. It's somebody who I could see like being part of that bigger next move. I'm not talking about DeJounte Murray, to be clear. I'm thinking of smaller names than that. But I could see that being the logic behind it. I don't think it would necessarily be, unless they just don't really. I mean, maybe if you don't have to give anything up, if you don't have to give anything up and you're able to get a good player who's going to help you now, and you just take him in, he's expiring or whatever.
So basically, I think Fournier and a
second, right. If you have Fournier and a second for somebody, like, you're not giving anything up, like that's different. But if you're going to give something up, I think they want something back that they can use in like the bigger trade, someone who would be considered an asset in that bigger trade, whose contract will be looked at as kind of solid and tradable. That's something I would look out for in the type of player who they would target. And I don't know if they're going to make a move, but I would not be surprised if they did. I think they've been pretty active. They've been pretty active talking to teams and that kind of stuff, and they're giving other teams the impression that making a move is very much like it's. I mean, we got a month till the deadline, but it's on the table. It's not like they're saying like, we're great, we're good as is, we're keeping the roster right now and seeing how we do with this group.
Would you agree with me that it would be shocking if they made a move that infringed upon their ability in terms of the Stepien rule to make any sort of all-in trade starting the day after the 2024 draft. So basically, like they will not offer any of their own future picks or swaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could do a similar thing to where they did with the Hart trade last year.
Yeah, sure.
Where the Josh Hart trade, they traded their own 2023 first round pick.
Yeah,
it was lottery protected, and if it didn't convey,
that's it. Goes away.
It just went away. I could see them doing something like that.
Sure.
I could see them trading the Dallas pick or any of the other protected firsts they have. I think that Dallas pick is looked at as pretty good because that's more than likely going to convey this year as maybe in the teens, maybe in the low 20s, something like that. So I think that Dallas pick, that can get you something. That's a real pick. I could see them doing that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to trade like 2 unprotected firsts for a 6th man. That's just not how they're going to operate. That's not how they're thinking right now.
So then would it also be fair to say that the pivot point for any trade might be Quentin Grimes in terms of, do they feel anybody is worth giving up Grimes for, or do you think that he is like off the table?
No, I don't think he's off the table. I don't think he's off the table at all. But I don't think they're just going to like give up Grimes for someone who's really good, but a rental.
Yeah.
I think if they do trade Grimes, it would be for somebody who they could then put into the next trade for the star and would be considered a net positive add for that team acquiring him.
Okay.
I don't know who that would be. I don't think there's anything concrete to be talking about now. We're only talking in theory. But like, if you call about Grimes, they're not like hanging up and being like, no, we're not talking about Quentin Grimes. Like they'll pick up the call.
Okay. Well, I got to get out of here, and you have work to do. I probably. I want to ask you. And by the way, you do a great job with your guest producer. I think his name is Andrew, on these mailbags. And so on Katz and Shoot on patreon.com. And so I purposefully did not want to go through like half a dozen possible trade candidates with you, because I'm sure that you will do that on your show, Katz and Shoot, with your guest producer. I think, again, his name is Andrew, at some point soon before the trade deadline. So make sure you subscribe to that. But I have a bone to pick with you.
Yes.
You said on said podcast, Katz and Shoot, that the notion of paying is a very specific bone. The notion of paying Isaiah Hartenstein more than Mitchell Robinson, or I forget what your exact words were. It was something along the lines of like, you can't pay a backup center like more than not that it was that more than starter, but like investing $30 million a year in the center position when one of those players is not Jokic or Embiid or whoever. That notion is like, I don't know about that. And I am looking at it differently right now. And Hartenstein's like such a big part of the conversation at the moment because of how he's playing. And I'm looking at it like, if they are going to continue to invest in Mitchell Robinson, which we don't know if they are, but let's just say for argument's sake, they want to continue investing in Mitchell Robinson, who has, I think you can now say fairly, injury concerns moving forward. Is that not? I think that's fair to say.
Of course.
Isn't that more of a reason to pay your backup center a lot of money to make sure he's there? Like, am I way off base? Because I heard you say that, and this was the first thought that popped into my mind, and so I wanted to ask you about it.
No, I mean, it's a really good point. It's totally fair, but I was just looking at the rest of the roster. Whereas, like,
yes,
a year from now, Jalen Brunson is going to be eligible for a max contract. A year from now,
he could extend this summer, so it would tack on.
But he's not going to sign the extension. Probably.
We talked about this a while ago, and you were like, "Yeah, maybe he signs it." On this very podcast, you said this, and I was like, "You're nuts." And
I know.
Yeah,
I was nuts. I mean,
you were nuts.
Look,
okay.
I guess we'll find out, but they can offer him an extension with a starting number of 140% of his current salary, which is, to use a technical term, a shit ton less than his max. So he can wait and get the max in free agency and get more. His max number is going to start at like a projected $46 million a year.
It's a lot of money. So
in 2025, which sounds so far into the future to me, but is literally next year, starting in 2025, Brunson is going to get a big number. We've been talking, that maybe Julius Randle will pick up his player option. If this is the player Julius Randle is, he's not picking up that player option.
For 32? Is it?
There's no way. There's no way he's picking up for 32. He could get way more than that in free agency. That is like, people are talking about that contract now as like a really good value contract. Like that's the days of Julius Randle making too much money to justify his production. Long gone. That's a good team friendly contract. That's way below his max, which can start at the same number as Brunson's. I don't think Julius Randle necessarily gets the max, but he gets more than 32. So you're going to have to pay a ton for Randle. You're going to have to pay a ton starting next year for Jalen Brunson. They're going to have to pay a ton for OG Anunoby. I don't know if it's going to be 35 a year. I don't know if it's going to be 38 a year. I don't know what it's going to be. I know it's going to be a number that's really high. It's going to be at least in the 30s. And then you put all of those together.
That's 125.
Now all of a sudden,
call it 125. Let's call it 125. The cap is going to be whatever it's going to be. But we're not talking about the cap here. We're talking about the first apron and then obviously the second apron.
Right. So. You still got Josh Hart making about 20. You still got Dante DiVincenzo making 11. You got Mitch on the books for like 13 or something that year.
Declining.
It's just a lot. It adds up. It's a lot. You might have Grimes starting a new contract then, or somebody else on another contract. If you trade Grimes for somebody, you might have somebody else. And keep in mind, this is a year from now. We're talking about, maybe they make the big star trade this summer. You make the big star trade this summer. Now you're all of a sudden, you're bringing in a guy who makes, presumably you're trading for him. He's on a max contract or damn close to a max contract. Now you're bringing in somebody who makes, let's call it 40 in 2025. So now you got Brunson in the 40s, Randle in the 40s, that guy in the 40s, Anunoby at least in the 30s. It just adds up. It becomes really, really difficult to build a roster. And now you're talking about threatening the second apron. And it doesn't have to go this way. Maybe they end up trading Randle as part of that huge star trade because it's somebody who doesn't work with Randle. Maybe they end up trading Mitchell Robinson because the guy who they get is a center. Maybe, I don't think it'll be Brunson. And I don't think it'll be Anunoby, because part of the reason they love Anunoby is they feel like he is just the perfect fit next to any type of player, which is totally correct. But it's just difficult to give out that kind of money. Maybe I shouldn't think about it this way, because I wrote a story about this last week. Mitch and Isaiah are so close. They are literally best friends in life. They're not best friends on the team. Like they are really best friends.
That was a great story, by the way. Great story.
Thank you. I just thought it was so wholesome. They are each other's real best friends, and they are each other's biggest cheerleaders. And normally, if you have a situation in the NBA where the backup makes more than the starter, there's going to be jealousy there. And there's going to be why is this guy making more than me if he's my backup? Yeah. And that's almost always going to be an issue in the NBA. Maybe this is the one scenario where the starter will be like, oh yeah, he got paid, and just be thrilled. Like that's possible. So maybe I shouldn't even factor that into the equation, but it's something that you have to at least consider, because most of the time in the NBA, you're going to have, like, if you pay somebody, like it's a little, and then also you're up in the market for Mitch, or maybe you let him walk. I don't know how it works, but it's just tough to give out that money when a solid enough backup center can cost way less, as great as Hartenstein has been. The other option, if Hartenstein really proves to just be a really, we've talked about him as one of the best, if not the best backup center in the league. He's not that anymore. He's just a good starting center now.
Yes. And
if you want to move on from Mitch and re-sign Hartenstein, that might be something that you're able to do. And it would take probably trading Mitch at his absolute lowest point of value. He'll be coming off the injury.
That's the thing.
But if you want Hartenstein as your starting center, that might be the move you end up making too.
I'm obviously there's a lot to watch for the rest of this year. I'm really excited to see Hartenstein specifically on the offensive end, and just how they continue to work on offense with him. And I wonder if, for as great as he was as a backup in LA 2 years ago, for as much as we've seen recently, like, what can this dude do without the governor on for real, with like real minutes? And again, as the point many have made, you never know how someone's going to respond to more minutes. And, you know, he's never played this many minutes. He's never played close to this many minutes in his life. So we'll see. But I'm excited to see what he could do.
Can I make 2 points on this really quick?
Please. Yes.
First point. The decision might be made for the Knicks.
Well,
it's possible they don't even have a decision to make, right?
Yeah.
Because the Knicks, because they have early bird rights on Hartenstein, they're only allowed to offer him. And you and I have discussed this in depth because we could not figure out the wording in the CBA. And I texted 2 cap guys with NBA teams, and even they weren't 100% sure. So I actually checked in with the league on the ruling on this.
That's where you got the answer?
Yes.
You didn't tell me that, you motherfucker.
Oh yeah, I checked in with the league.
That's good.
And the rule is so the Knicks are allowed to offer Hartenstein a starting salary in his next deal up to 175% of his current salary. But because he has bonuses in his current salary, we weren't sure if it was 175% of his base or 175% of the base
what he
plus
actually
bonuses.
Of what he
right.
Which is what he's actually going to make this year. Probably.
Yes. And it turns out that they are allowed to offer him up to $14.3 million in a base, along with up to $1.8 million in bonuses. And they can make those bonuses pretty attainable, basically get him a $16.1 million starting salary. But if somebody comes in and says, you're awesome, we want you to be our starting center, here's 3 years, $65 million, the Knicks can't match it. And Hartenstein might be like, $65 million. Holy crap. This was great, but see you guys. And the Knicks can't do anything about that. So I think that's something that is on the table. Yeah. And then the other part of it, which was my second point, which is, yeah, that would suck for the Knicks if they lost Hartenstein. He's a really good player. But what a great problem to have.
It's, yeah.
If Isaiah Hartenstein gets paid so much money that the Knicks can't afford to bring him back,
he's been awesome.
That means that if he gets $22 million a year this summer, that means he played like a $22 million player the rest of this year.
Yep.
And that means the Knicks probably ended up having a pretty damn good season. Yep. So it's a really good problem to have. And that's a point that somebody made to me recently where I'm like, yeah, you sign a guy, you're paying him 9.2 and you get $22 million value out of him. You just have to chalk it up and be like, that guy did awesome for us. Let's just appreciate what's there, you know?
All right. And on that note, I appreciate you, Fred Katz, because you just give us so much, so much. And that is what you do. You are like Santa.
only in appearance, only in body shape.
Who was the guy that made that fucking joke? Oh my god! Did you know you were on TV for 3 seconds in was it in Philly?
Really?
Yeah, you were on. I was gonna. I didn't text you about that, but then I texted you about when you got your article when Kenny Albert chatted out your article.
Yeah, that was cool. That was very nice of Kenny.
Yeah, it was very because it was a great article. You write many great articles, and I love that we get to have you come on here and talk about them. In case you missed anything that Fred wrote over the last week and change, again, the Arcidiacono story is dropping today as you're listening to that, but also the must-read story on the friendship between Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, and then of course the story about the Randall signs, which you didn't even get a chance to touch on today because there's so much other stuff going on, but. Be sure to listen to an episode of Katz and Shoot coming to a podcast platform near you. Actually, no, it's not coming to a podcast platform. You go to a Patreon to listen to it, but that's fine. It's great stuff that you do. Thank you so much. Anything you want to say before you get out of here?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit annoyed that Andrew changed my name in the super in the video below to Fred Katz, and that's not what I wrote.
Well, that's
it is your name though.
I mean. You know, I thought Ryan Arcidiacono it all was a really good little title there. And you just change it to Fred Katz. I don't enjoy how professional this entire operation has become. I think I need to derail more of it next time just to keep Andrew on his toes.
You have your own podcast to derail anytime and you like.
It's not the same.
Fred.
Oh, it's derailed, my friend.
You know what? I'll bring it down.
A mess.
I'll bring it down before we get out of here. We didn't bring up urine or poo once, even though there was a germane opportunity to do so with the Pistons' performance against the Kings last night. But we're not going to talk about it now because I'm late for dinner upstairs. You could, if you guys want to stay on and talk about pee and poo, I'm going to let you. No, Andrew's giving me.
Wrap it up, John. We got this.
Oh, okay.
We did good.
Hey, John. Sounds like you're in trouble.
Arcidiacono, no fucking way did you just say that.
I'm done. Go read Fred Katz, The Athletic, or don't. I don't care. Whatever you want to do. Go listen to Katz and Shoot. Go read him. He's very good. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Knicks FO School podcast. We appreciate all of you, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out. Bye.